Oh, we're doing, oh, they're not here?
I think he just went to use the restroom.
Oh, just.
But we have to have minutes and roll call and all that other stuff, so.
It's gonna take about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Five of us tonight, or?
It's only 5 minutes
Yeah.
tonight, yeah. Frank is not here, Lori hurt her neck, so she wasn't.
Is Tony still on our committee or
No,
not?
Tony has resigned,
Oh, Tony resigned.
yeah.
So it's just us, Lori, and Frank, no.
And we don't have a, they haven't appointed a council. So
I don't know.
I don't think they have an interest to. No.
Yeah.
Have they set up the Hollow,
No.
the Scottish thing yet?
Nope.
They didn't do it the last one either, because I watched you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're calling to order the Thursday, March 30th Halliwell Review Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Najarian?
Here.
Mr. Simpkins?
Here.
Mr. Savini?
Here.
Mr. Mayo?
Here.
And the chair is here. Second item on the agenda is the meeting minutes from our March 16th, 2023 meeting. Oh,
Just officially acknowledge.
yep. Public comment is next on our agenda.
Have a motion to close?
Given that no one is in the audience this evening, we're going to assume that there is no further public comment. And we did not receive any further emails to be read into the record, so we'll continue onwards. Now we'll go to the draft meeting minutes of the March 16th, 2023 meeting for review and approval for this evening.
Make a motion to accept.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to accept in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, our minutes from March 16th are approved. All right, so on our agenda tonight are the two interviews for this evening, BH+A and Studio Jaed. I believe Mr. Bargman is here for BH+A, so I'm just going to go out in the hall and see if he's ready to go. Come on in. All right, that's fine. So the floor is yours for this evening.
Okay, well, there'd be 7 of you, so I have 7 handouts.
Yeah, unfortunately, some members were not able to join us tonight.
Okay? This is what I'm going to show.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Duplicate, but
Thank you very much.
the main purpose is to have my business card, Joel Barker, and you don't have to remember that.
Perfect.
All right. Okay to start?
Go right ahead. Yep.
All right. Well, my name's Joel Bargman, just mentioned that. And I'm here by myself because on these feasibility studies, I'm the one you get. I do a lot of the work. I do the presentations. I know you wanted to meet the project manager, but you can talk to a bunch of our clients. It's a really important part of the project because the idea gets turned to reality, and that's the part of it that I like to work on, and I think we've had a good track record of doing it. So just a note, these are little images from the base of the building that's out there. And I thought they were really great, so we're using those in the presentation. Hope we're not violating any copyright rules. But it just sort of, I think it showed the spirit of the building and the spirit of the site, and I really love that about it. And I'll get to the building, I promise, but the first part is sort of how we think about what might go on in the site and how we get some data. And when you got the proposal originally, we thought this was going to be much more about a community center building, so I wrote the proposal about a building. So then your email the other day was more about phase 1 might be about outdoor recreation in the site. So I've sort of changed this presentation to focus more on site elements, but I did want to begin by having you think that we are a community center recreation firm, and that's what our specialty is. Senior centers, youth centers, preschools, recreation centers. Whoops. Okay, so before I get to your site, what exactly is the process? There's roughly 8 steps involved. Finding out data, meeting with your steering committee, whatever, or working with surveys, and I'll show you how we do that in the past. And then identifying what types of services you might need in the future versus what types of services you might need today. So while you said phase 1 is site work, or maybe outdoor recreation, we don't want to forget that there might be a phase 2 or a phase 3. So that's step 2. Then we would look for, you talk about grants. So who are your partnership opportunities? Where else can money be founded? What are potential partners? Sometimes there's a YMCA that gets involved, Boys and Girls Clubs, or types of private-public partnerships that are becoming more prevalent. And we'll keep working through those steps, and I'll show you how that works on a timeline, same steps at the end of the presentation. But it ends up with the final report. First thing we want to do is really understand with you the issues in the community, how many people there are, how many kids are there, what's the proportion of senior citizens that might have a different use time of the facility than kids or working adults. you know, what are the sort of demographic characteristics, and we have a firm that gathers that data for us. Two is, we will conduct meetings. We would also potentially do an online survey. There are some very simple online surveys that we've been using, very high level of success. In Dartmouth, Mass, we had 856 respondents to our survey. So you get maybe a much broader cross-section of responses than you do at a public meeting where, you know, only a select number of folks are going to come out. And then oftentimes we'll break out into a focus group. And a focus group in this project might be the recreation department, your human resources folks at town hall. What are the smaller groups that are looking for places? This is actually from a survey in Norton, and the online survey for a community center came back with the #1 outdoor walking path. So you're not necessarily on the wrong path of thinking about outdoor recreation first. But what we find is even with seniors and folks that you wouldn't think are that interested in the active recreation, these community centers or the outdoor recreation sites are really focusing more and more on fitness activities, and they call them centers for active living as opposed to community centers or what they used to be called in the past. So they're much more actively oriented. These are sort of how we help to define the program in Norton. We did a similar study in Dartmouth, as I mentioned. Get really great response on these surveys. These are examples of how we might solicit community support, either in a small meetings or town-wide meetings. Tape up elements on the wall so people can react to the things that we're talking about, vote, different sizes of work groups. Incidentally, the online Zoom is working phenomenally well for this kind of a meeting because people don't have to go out, especially if you're looking for response from some of the older residents. They love not having to go to a meeting at 7 or 8 at night. And so I wouldn't rule out public Zoom type meetings. So research the community, integrate community input, develop realistic options. So we want to pick up 3 options for your site. Sort of a low cost, a medium cost, and maybe what the far end of it is. But we don't want to just focus on one element. We want to have a broad array of elements to study, and then provide cost estimates for what those different elements cost and how they might be put together in operational costs.
So, is it okay to?
Yeah?
As it relates to the 3 options, so clearly that means that you're aware of or willing to accept any fiscal constraints, budgetary constraints, so that you may sense from the community organizations where you can either go the wishing, you know, the greatest and highest, or the middle, or just the very utilitarian type approach.
Exactly right.
Design won't be hampered. You'll adjust to the realities.
You'll do the best scheme you can for what we conceive to be the baseline cost, and we'll do the best we can for the mid-cost. I really don't like doing projects when they say, well, do the wish list. Let's understand what everybody wants, because then the project gets to be so big that no one can afford it. So, I mean, I like to have the bookends, but when you just have, tell us what you want, and then you put that into an equation, it usually ends up into a project that's too expensive.
One last question.
Yeah.
Initially is, I'm just curious, retrospect, post-project, have you ever done a post-project survey to see if all of the input that you used as your basis was met with the expectation of the public?
Well, we haven't done the online survey, but I'll tell you, like, you know, everybody says, don't say if you build it, they will come. But it turns out that if you build it, people will come. And so inevitably, when we try to size program rooms, we'll say they need to be 600 square feet, and people will say, no, they don't, they could be 450 square feet. We only have this many people in our programs today, and I say, well, you have to, you have to expect that a new facility is going to bring new people. And so that's the most difficult element, and oftentimes the projects are a little bit smaller than they end up wanting to be 10 years down the road. So we do have the advantage of in Needham, the community center hired us to do a 10-year assessment, and we're learning sort of where things have changed and where things have grown in that. But it's a good point. You could do the online survey. And so you don't want to just get opinions from the taxpayers. You want to understand the users, and the users may be anyone from small kids who have one set of ideas to, I'll show you a picture out of order. But this is the slide I was looking for. So this gives you the different ranges from the smallest, and we'll plot them out. So we have a list of programs. The base scheme only has certain 10,000 square foot. The alternate scheme has 15,000 square feet. And what's in between, what are you gaining, what are you losing? So we'll do that analysis. We generally pull that down to 3 and then price it, put a cost estimate on it so people know what they would be paying.
Historically, what is the average in the middle of, yes, a lot of that's driven by the relative size of the community that you're designing for, but historically, does the number 1 or the number 3 or the number 2?
I think it's generally in the middle, someplace, that people quickly learn that if it's too small, there may not be a point of doing it. But it doesn't mean that you can't phase it too and design it to be bigger, but to bring, and that's sort of where I want to go here. So I have an idea that I wanted to, I'm having a little trouble with my little distance here. Okay, so here's your site. You'll love this. You used to be able to just put a path to connect to the neighborhood. Today that would be going back and forth. But it's sort of like you said in your email, it's really an interesting, wide open space. And the buildings are in tough shape. So I understand why it's not, the community isn't renovating them. But there's one building that is sort of interesting. The big gym is a heavy timber building, so it's not rusting out. It's in pretty decent shape on the inside, at least I could tell looking through the windows. And it's not in terrible shape on the outside. It has a foyer to it. There's, on the back side, there's a kitchen because it's got some cafeteria stuff in there. So I thought one study might be, even if you're doing outside use, is how cool would it be to be able to have a gym and the outside recreation program? Because what a gym gives you is the opportunity to subdivide it into smaller rooms that are multi-purpose. You could have in a gym a morning program for preschoolers, and you could have seniors playing pickleball on the other side of the gym. Gym's really interesting because it also works so well. Seniors love to get there early in the morning. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. I can't put enough pickleball courts in. And you could have, you can have aerobics, you can do a lot of things in there, including getting little kids in the building at the next go around. So afternoon is a good time for toddlers. After school programs, people walk in the gym. I know you don't have a track, but people do walking. A lot of places don't have wrestling for their high schools anymore, so this multi-purpose room put in a wrestling mat so the kids could have a wrestling program. Different communities are different ways. Dog training can happen at night. A gym is a wonderful place. There's a really nice gym on that site, so I was wondering, is there a way to, at low cost, do the outdoor recreation and keep the gym and sort of have a nucleus out here that might be exciting as a community center. So that brings us to master planning and a few examples for you to think about. I started with this because it's 20 years ago, so you can see that I'm not just starting in this field. We've been at it for a long time. This is Snake Den Park. It's a master plan. It didn't get funded by the state of Rhode Island, but it's sort of a very similar project to yours. We had this site, and how do we bring outdoor recreation into it? And interestingly enough, we had a water park facility, and it's relatively large, but that core facility is one thing that a lot of folks are doing because they can be done relatively inexpensively and they're fun for little kids. The other thing that's interesting about your existing site is, whoops, right off of the gym on this side is a big outdoor basketball court. So there's sort of to renovate those and make those good would be relatively inexpensive as opposed to putting them in a new site on that particular site. So I like the core area that you have. Similar project, work in Rhode Island. This is three-town outdoor recreation master plan for Lincoln, Concord, Lexington. This landscape architect that's on our team and I did this project, but I did it because it had a lot of trails, and the trails on the different, there you have the history of the Revolutionary War. Here you might have Slaterville and some other kinds of history to interpret. Here's another thing. This is Salem did in their master plan for their park. Wanted to get a nice big outdoor pool. Over here, I mentioned that water feature. There they put in a water feature. It's open 6 months a year, and you don't have to go to the pool to use the water features. So it's a way to bring toddlers and infants into that park. Another outdoor use master plan. This is Rosemary Park. There's a trail system that runs around the conservation land all around this pond. And then we did the parking lot, recreation building, outdoor restrooms, outdoor water park, and then a swimming pool. So sort of a long-range, larger community, but a long-range master plan for an outdoor recreation. I have this is Chatham, and in your book I had Chatham for the community center. I just had it here for a little bit of a joke. This is a site that united the Chatham A's, the Little League field, outdoor recreation, the parking for downtown activities, 4th of July, all that. We put a little outdoor restroom. Outdoor recreation, underserved in America, the restrooms. It's not something to think about. So, and this is a very different community center, but what we did in the outdoor master planning was we created a town green for Pembroke on their main street. City Hall is there. There's a historic building. This new community center really is, and the library, really intended to bring together. So the master plan for that could be like yours. There could be long-term public buildings on your Halliwell site that we don't necessarily consider for the next 5, 10, or 15 years. And then I mentioned pickleball. This is in Sandwich. They just built the community center, but we have skateboard park, pickleball, and tennis. So, you know, that was done first, and that's relatively inexpensive and gets the thing going. The outdoor skateboard park is hugely popular. And then just have this master plan for Hammonasset Beach. So we do a lot of outdoor recreation master planning. And I mentioned the popularity of these spray parks. They're relatively inexpensive. They cater to the kids. They're great in the wintertime. I mean, in the summertime. So here you have the gym and the basketball courts. So I thought that the master plan would really, you know, it's sort of obvious, focus on this area. There's some gardens here, which seems like an interesting avenue to consider. And then, you know, if you get rid of these buildings here, I thought it was still neat to have this infrastructure that would be relatively inexpensive to renovate and begin to give you a nucleus of a master plan that you could put trails, interpretation, nature use. In Snake Den Park, we put a running trail in, so the idea was this Rhode Island cross-country championships could be at Snake Den. You could do something like that here, bring different schools in for different uses. So when I do the programming, I mentioned the uses. Recreation for youth comes up a lot in communities. Fitness, very popular. Came out of the Falmouth survey. This is a new kind of arts and crafts room. It's a makerspace, so it's got a 3D printer. It's a way of sort of bringing arts and crafts into the 21st century and having a little bit different of an idea for community spaces. This shows you don't ever want to say no in a meeting. We had this multi-purpose room in the Kittery Community Center, and people said, we want to have a theater. And you said, well, how do you get stacked seating? And well, you can get the stacked seating that collapses against the back wall. And you have your big open room, and when you want to have a theater event, you bring the seating out. So it's a way of doing something very rich in a very simple, multi-purpose way. And last, I think your site sort of leads to it. I kept thinking of greenhouses. I saw the gardens there, and I thought, well, a greenhouse, I'm not sure what they're growing, but I think they're very successful here because they're growing. This is Massachusetts, that's legal what they're growing. Okay, so then we put cost estimates on it. We have two estimators that do this work. I brought this one because Keogh happens to be a Rhode Island-based estimator. And then when you put the building costs together, it's not done. We have to put all your other costs. So this is the total project cost worksheet, the architect's fees, the engineer's fees, wetland flaggings, all the other costs that go into the project. And this just shows that our current projects, even in this wildly inflationary time, we have a really good track record of estimating our projects to having them happen successfully.
How many square feet are those projects?
Yeah, these are, well, this is 23,000. Sudbury is 50,000, but 12,000 of that is an existing pool. Those are quite large. But there are ones here, like Falmouth is 15, Situate is 15, Needham is 12, Randolph is combined facility is about 28,000. So in closing, I had those 8 steps and I just sort of simplified it. It's sort of I think like a month to get started and understand the site, look at the buildings, put our base drawings together, data collection, come up with ideas, have a charrette. What's your preferred option out of the charrette? What's the cost of that? Now you have another charrette because you're reporting back to the people that were at the first charrette what the costs are, and then they'll have maybe a different opinion about what they want. How do you implement it, and then do your final report? We could do it a lot faster, but I was going to suggest 8 months, which might take you to the end of 2023. So if you needed to get earlier, we could. But I think that doing it at sort of having enough time for people to digest the process is really helpful, and not go too quickly. So, like I said, I love the signs out there. We're enthusiastic about the project. We have the time to do it. That was one of your questions. And if you want to talk more about community center buildings, I have those after this, but I tried to focus on the outdoor recreation here. So, thank you.
I've got a question. We had investigated the why. We had investigated the YMCA
Yeah, we've done a number of studies. In other states, they're more successful in doing joint ventures between Ys and communities, but we've, in Burlington, Vermont, we did a big joint city YMCA
Right.
study, and that's, it's, in the ones that have been successful, the YMCA tends to take over the management of the property, and then the townsfolk can use it, so they sort of control the recreation piece, which is, I think, an okay model, but.
You know, we talked to them at length, but now that, I don't know if you've been told, but we have another project in town where they're going to, the federal government's coming with a $4 million grant for Scouts Hall, which is the center of town, and that's going to be developed into a more substantial senior center, which is what we thought originally for the Halliwell project. So now
Yeah.
we're going to back burner, and Scouts project is for front burner project.
Right.
Nothing to that, I know.
Because I was actually hoping that the senior center would want to go down here, because what's better than having a senior center but a place to go outside and walk,
Totally agree.
pickleball, and so many of our centers are sort of landlocked, and you know, it's a wonderful site for that.
So you're, if things were to progress, your schedule is receptive to starting quickly if the award were issued or grant provided?
Yeah, sure. The summer's always a tricky time, so, you know, some people don't, some communities don't like to do too much with the community outreach in July and August, because people think they were not able to attend the meetings, so.
And just to reinforce, I guess, some of the thought, well, we were trying to be creative to work with the town council to get the momentum to move forward. The idea of the master plan is critical so that we can integrate, even if we did it in phases, the long range, so we understand, so the design, phase 1 design doesn't compromise phase 2 design. So all of what would be proposed in your presentation would, it would be to get a handle on what the whole package would be.
Right.
And then if the powers that be decide to focus just on phase 1, we can safely do that without compromising phase 2 and 3, and have a viable entity at the end that could then be complemented as money and interest comes in for the next phase.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at. Thank you.
Well, no, I think it's key, because it's also a direct correlation to the money.
Yeah,
So we need to be able to know that we would not be compromising the design if we do phase 1. And it helps, because now we'll have the complete picture, which is what you've been stressing all along.
and I will say that, you know, lots of times, something comes up in the next 15 or 20 years that we had no idea was going to come up. So you want to be frugal with your use of the land, I think.
And you know, it's a little bit of a quagmire for both, you know, depending on who is awarded. But this idea that the senior center quote is going to be developed and in essence taken out of their design, even though probably they would love to have it because it integrates the community into one site as opposed to segmenting the community. But we're at the mercy of whatever. We're fortunate enough as a town to get the grant, and so.
And as I said
Previously to the council, what's going on at Scouters Hall is addressing a right now need. What we're going to be doing at Halliwell is going to be a right now and future needs. So, you know, we could adapt a master plan that says we're going to accommodate more senior center space down there, because eventually they're going to outgrow the addition that they put on Scouters Hall.
Now, let me
So-
ask you, I would say to both, sir, if you're thinking outside the box, would anybody be willing, if either of the designers was willing, would it be possible to combine the two so that their designs Is that even something that's worth considering?
There's a lot of what-ifs right now because that committee hasn't even been formed yet. But I would fully expect that there's going to be collaboration between our group and the Scouters Hall group. Because there's a lot of information, a lot of overlap between the two of us. So there's going to need to be that collaboration.
It's interesting that you got the money because in our other projects, Pembroke just got $3 million, but the state wouldn't fund it until the community had voted to fund the whole project, and then the state reimbursed them for $3 million. So they had to have that commitment registered. So it's interesting that it's working that way for you.
Yeah, I had sort of two questions. Thank you for probably reorganizing your presentation tonight in response to some of the questions that or what you had understood from our emails, because you're spot on that, like, the focus for us is not only on the building, but on the site as a whole. In the materials that you shared tonight and before, there's just a ton of community space, community center work. Is that primarily your bread and butter? If I'm understanding, it seems like that's mostly what you guys do.
That's what we've been doing for 35 years, but our other bread and butter is multifamily housing, which is good to have. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So we also have an interiors department that does, in addition to our community centers, they do other interiors. But recreation is what I do and
Okay.
what we do most of. There aren't many firms that do swimming pools. They're quite a lot of fun, and so we get to do a lot of those.
When you talk about phasing the project, at the site level, and, if we can't do the building for 5, 10, 15 years, like you said, this is not a huge site. I mean, it's good space there, but it's not, relatively large. How do you think about phasing it in a way that you don't just have this empty spot waiting for a building to be built? How do you make use of a space like that while you're waiting for that plan to be implemented?
Right. Well, there's two things. When I was visiting it, was in the middle of the day. I was surprised how many people were down there with their dogs. And I thought that that's why I remember I had the site with the circle and the trail system. I thought the first thing you would do would maybe create a walking trail system so that people could go down there. It's not that big of a site, but you could do a couple laps. You could take your dog. The big open fields are sort of begging for that activity. So I thought you wouldn't necessarily leave these big open. I mean, when you take the buildings down, it's going to be a scar. So we'd have to figure out what to do with that. And there's a hint of what you might do. I don't know, it's probably too big of an area, but someone started putting some gardens in, and could you put some community gardens that might be interesting to folks, to use those plots of land where there was a building that, as you mentioned, are going to be bare.
Yeah.
But I think that the other way is, with Kyle, we could take that land and we could turn it into a gorgeous meadow with, the right grass planting and that, and have, it doesn't have to look like it's waiting for a building to come.
I think you answered all the other questions that I had already. It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
I have one other, I just wanted to commend you for having courage to not be afraid to talk about the idea of reusing that one building, if in fact, you were able to prove that structurally there was enough integrity there, because I think it lends towards the mindset that you're willing to be flexible in design. You're not fixed on, well, it has to be new and it has to be the way we want. So I compliment you for that, because it would help, if you're able to, if you were rewarded and you were able to integrate a functional design using one of the existing buildings that we've already paid for, I think it would go a long way.
the structure of the gym is the most popular structure these days. It's like what's old is new, so that heavy timber is exciting to see.
I mean, I'm a builder, so I think the same way. It's just the way the mind works.
I was just wondering, given the fact that there is talk in town of the building at Scouters Hall down the street becoming a senior center in addition to Scouts, I personally don't think we would rule out activities for seniors, and I'm just wondering, in the projects that you've developed, if the feedback comes back to us that seniors want more activities, of the projects you've developed, do you see a lot of those integrating, I guess, multi-generational either activities through building, through outdoor recreation, or is it kind of just segmented senior centers and I'd say youth centers or community centers?
Well, it's sort of both. In Situate, we had these buildings and they happened to have a gym. So instead of building a new gym for the senior center, which is here, we just renovated the gym, and then they have that sort of joint use program. And at another one I was going to show you is yeah, this is Sudbury. It's well, first of all, the senior center gets used from 8:30 in the morning to 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. The kids get out of school and they can go to the multi-purpose room. So here we have seniors, here we have recreation, and in the middle we have where the two teams come together. So the kids use the multi-purpose room after school, the seniors use it up until then. So these are sort of more generic shared spaces. These are very specific. Senior, these are very specific. So you can share. I always get in trouble by saying this, but you do need to have some good fences to have good neighbors. Like, the seniors don't want the kids all over the senior center all the time. You have to sort of find a way to integrate them. And it makes sense because on school vacation week and in the summer, the kids are there all the time and you're not quite able to share the facility. But this site, I forgot to mention that, lends itself really great to summer camp and those kind of activities that would be wonderful for kids. So the answer is both and. You need some segregation, but there's programs that can be generally shared as long as people feel like they have their own space.
You've done so many projects that are like this. What are the big problems that you typically run into that we might not be thinking about as part of this planning process? Problems, challenges?
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't know, from my point of view, the biggest problem is coming up with the right size project that the voters can get behind. So trying to understand that sweet spot that is going to get approved is really is hard, and the challenge is we've been working in Chatham, Mass for 5 years, and we've been to town meeting twice and got turned down, and now they're going a third time with the same project and a huge groundswell of support for a building that's $3 million more expensive than it was a year and a half ago when they turned it down. So the biggest problem I have is convincing people that if you want to do it, it's never good to wait too long because things just get more complicated. If we wanted to renovate the gym, it would get more dilapidated. So the money seems to be the biggest problem. Understanding where the sweet spot is, and then having people agree on that. And some communities are really amazing at knowing what the threshold for where they think a project can get approved at. And I don't think there's anything wrong with designing a project to the budget that you think can get approved. And a lot of people get annoyed with that approach, but I think it's better to do something than nothing. So
It's the reality.
did do a charrette, should we include what's happening in the community totally, and not just this property? Would we look at something like that?
Well, I would think that you would want to involve the folks at the other site in that charrette, or that workshop, yeah,
The joint charrette almost.
yeah. And I think you would get, even if they do the full senior center there, that I think, you know,
If you can go back, because it was intriguing that part of your community outreach was like a Zoom session. Maybe you can describe a little bit what that would look like? Is it more of a presentation? Is there input from those attending? What does that exactly look like?
yeah, generally, we do a presentation to introduce the project, and then it opens up the way it would at a town meeting where people can, there's a moderator, and then the people line up to speak and respond. We're doing a community center in Newton. We haven't had a public meeting on the project. It's been, the pandemic was so successful in getting folks to go that they've continued the project online as opposed to public meetings. This audience, you know, it's parents with kids. It's a great way to, you don't have to get a babysitter. You can, both parents can listen in. Seniors love it. It's not a bad, I think they all, it's one, you know, a focus group, a Zoom session, a public meeting, I think they all work together.
No, I like the idea because, as you said, it's you can tune in. I mean, I've been part of many through different things where you can tune in, do something else, but also keep one ear on. Okay, this is what's going on. Is something like that recorded and then available at another time, so people who can't attend for whatever reason can go back and reference that, maybe listen to it at their own leisure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So generally the towns create a website on the town website, a page, and then all the records of those meetings are on that page.
We've gone through and answered all the questions that we could forward to you earlier, so I don't know if anybody else has any other further questions.
I won't.
Sorry. What do you see being unique about this project compared to the work that you've done everywhere else?
You were saying the site wasn't that big. To me, the site's enormous. So that's one thing that we really like about it, that you could put buildings on here, you could think about it long term, but it has the opportunity for some outdoor kind of activities that I think would be really great. And I think that makes the sharing of the site more opportunity. So to me, what's unique is the big area of the site. The only part of the big area is that are people going to get to it? It's a little bit not, I mean, it's close to here, but there's also a center of gravity down the other end of town. So, you know, your historic end is a little bit more remote from here.
It's only a quarter mile from here. It's walking distance.
Not far at all.
As the crow flies.
All right. Well, thank you for coming this evening. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to come and meet with us. According to my timer, you do have 8 minutes left. So if you had anything else that you wanted to add to your presentation or anything like that.
I was speaking so quickly because I thought I had 40 minutes, so I was I was looking at my watch thinking I didn't have any time.
No, you got plenty of time.
No,
Actually, I had a quick
Yeah.
follow-up, given, you know, this idea of the phase one and the phase two, however it plays out on the municipal side, and then the idea of integrating and pulling in the private sector via such as the Y, since we had a very nice initial reception from them, which allows almost the town in the future to truly multi-use in a different way, in that the outdoor areas could be Parks and Rec administered, inclusive of concert space if we wanted to, food truck areas, the walking parks, the cross-country track meets, et cetera, But then we're also allowing that you could conceivably have the private establishment, which would alleviate budgetary concerns. So it would require, a little bit of thought as to how we would integrate a multifunctional building where the private operator may have 3/4 of the building and the town may operate 1/4 of the building.
Yeah,
So you've done a little bit of that, some of that, or only as the need presents itself?
I think, we've done a little bit of that, not a lot.
But it's not, from a design point of view,
It's not
it's
an
more
issue.
legal issue.
I mean, a lot of our projects have 2 or 3 different separate user groups. They may not be public versus private, but, we, the one in Needham has a health department office and a recreation department office, 2 completely different user groups, and they're sharing core facilities, but have their own identity within that. So,
Last one I had, though, I guess, is this the most remote site that you have worked on if it were to be developed? Most of the pictures were not beautiful, but more centrally located within a given city or town because it happened to be of the focal point. Is this remoteness, do you consider it to give an alternate design challenge or no?
well, maybe I didn't understand I thought it maybe wasn't in the center of gravity of the dense part of the population, but maybe that could be wrong. So I thought there might be more people around it, and I was hoping for more density to get more walking.
You're not incorrect in that regard. My reference was to, as it relates to the street, for example.
Yeah, there's only one,
It's
yeah.
not in plain sight, so when I can say it's remote, does that add some dynamics to you?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I was looking, could we get an entry off of the bottom side of the site somehow? And I didn't know if we could cross over the wetland either,
Well, I know fire is gonna require one, so
Yeah.
whether that probably would be part of the design.
but I think the remoteness of the site is of interest. You can see in my suggestions, I was going for a more natural look, and I think that you have that opportunity to, first to preserve the ecology and the 2, you're not gonna have a lot of complaints because the abutters aren't that close to the building. So when there's a good advantage to that. And then I think that the third thing is just the size of that site gives you a lot of opportunity to think about things long-term that would make it a very interesting opportunity, to have, I don't know, you might come up with some completely different ideas for this corner of the site that might, I don't, we haven't gotten there yet, but are there other uses that might be out of the blue that would go in there that make it more affordable for the community? Like, can they sell off of, is that a ridiculous thing to think about to help fund the project? I don't know.
At this point, the possibilities are endless, so.
Right, and so our job is to rein those in.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we're looking for at this point. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to come out and meet with us. We are expecting to make a decision this evening and make a recommendation to the town council on Monday night. So we can certainly keep you apprised of what's going on and where we're headed to. So thank you very much again for coming out and taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope you come in solo, but
Nope, that's fine.
I'm what you get.
Perfect, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ozier and Dr. Roberts, we have We had public comment. Do you have any public comment that you'd like to add for this evening? Because this is a rare instance that we have an audience this evening. So, well, I just don't want to cut anybody off, you know? I appreciate the time of you guys coming out to listen in on everything, so if there was anything that you guys had on your mind, we're here for it. Thank you again. Have a good night. Okay. Yeah, we have a few minutes, so if you'd like, we can certainly discuss that.
Very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, you put a lot of thought into the community, which I thought, that impressed the hell out of me. You give it a great deal of thought, which I thought was good.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the tone and the temperament of the presentation. I liked his a very natural response to multiple questions on multiple levels, very confident but open to a creative thought. I did like, just because it shows that there's not the fear, I did like, we could reject it, but the idea that using the gym to link one to the other, you know, was I thought was, it was a little bit of a seed that you throw out there to get a sense of, well, no, we don't like that at all, or yeah, we do. And so I think in total, and what was also unique, because it took thought, was the his use of the pictures from the children. So to me, it established a level of sincerity and understanding that that was a school, and I'm sure there are thousands of memories of the children who attended there. So it might be a nice thing to even take that and incorporate that into the design somehow. So no, I agree wholeheartedly. I was impressed, and I also sensed that there wasn't that threshold where, well, we won't go below this point. You know, we're gonna design, you know, you can appreciate it more than any one of us. We won't design below this point. And I'll tell you, we all know, a lot of those communities, I mean, you had some extremely wealthy communities, you had some middle-of-the-road communities, and you had some average communities, but they were far more on the higher end than on the lower end.
Right.
So you know, and I did like the idea of thinking outside the box with regard to maybe creating cross-country tracks so that you're engaging and you're pulling. One of the things that council people have told us and other people have said is, how do we, because even the Y was harping on, how do we bring other people into our community to, so that we're not just serving our own community, but we're serving the larger.
I don't believe the high school has a cross-country track, so they have to have all their meets
Not a-
away.
yeah.
Run around
So-
high school, I think, for their,
For
Not a-
practices. But to hold a meet, middle school and high school have to always go away to sort of have something, the potential, and explore something that could be there.
And that didn't even come up in a charrette.
Yeah,
So
Right.
so that was part of that, already thinking creatively as to how we utilize even the phase one to the best of our.
but when we get to the point of the charrette, we've already done the charrette. For that, we've got to incorporate it with whatever's going on at Scouters at the same time, so that people can evaluate what we've got to offer here in North Smithfield. What do you want to do here? What do you want to do there? I think you're going to have to.
Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a balancing act.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's the need for the collaboration between
Yeah,
both groups.
absolutely.
That's going to need, that's, you know, that's almost unwritten at this point that we have to. Because whenever the council does form the committee, and whoever is, you know, running that show, I was going to be sending them all of our information so that they have it, so that they don't have to go and reinvent the wheel with what's been going on.
Oh, no, it needs to be, the people deserve a collaboration.
Exactly.
So-
We can't be, you know, we can't be doing things in silos, because then that's just not gonna, we're gonna be wasting time and effort and money when we have similar end goals. And one thing that really stuck out for me as well was that, in conversations with council and conversations with the public, we can start to talk about cost right off the bat. If we say that, okay, our community feels comfortable spending X amount of money for this endeavor, we can get that right off on the bat and say, okay, BH+A, this is gonna be the cost here that we're looking to expend. How much can we get for that? What can we do? What phase or part of what phase can we get things done? So that was good to hear too, that they are very used to designing to a budget.
I also like that, I wrote it down, he used the term or the phrase active living for that, their design philosophy for, which I think goes towards, that we may not have heard that phrase specifically from the people, but I believe it would be well received because it's a different twist. It's most beneficial to them because it allows them to get the exercise, no matter the age group that you're talking
I
about.
think we have to think about the possibility that while Scouters could accommodate seniors, there's probably another senior population that might not go to a senior center, but is looking for other types of activities that can be provided at this site. Pickleball is big, but there's other types of activities that can incorporate seniors.
Right. One of the things I do want to caution our group about is trademarking some terminology, because we have been getting the terminology that we've started in this group has been getting thrown around for quite a few other buildings, such as multi-generational centers. So if we're going to be calling Halliwell a active
Living.
active living area, we're going to have to trademark that. Just so people know exactly
that
what they're
the
talking,
source where it
what
came
area
from.
we're talking about. All right.
I do want to offer my impression. I was, when they originally sent their materials, I was taken with how, like, the wealth of experience that they had just in this type of project. And, I mean, the thinking was sort of confirmed tonight by his presentation and the ease at which he sort of talked about these things. They feel like they would be a really good fit to help us not only drill down into what the community wants and needs in relation to what our town can afford, but create a good, solid, phased master plan. I don't know, I'm curious to see what Studio Jaed brings to the table, because my impression from them was that they did not have the same level of community center planning experience. But I guess we'll find out in about 9 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was, already visited the site, already has some ideas as far as what potential could be, and so he's already thinking about it. He seems rather intrigued by the site, given the size, given the.
For me, to see an architect take the time to go visit the site, to go take everything in and see what things look like, that's always a very good sign to me, because that means he's already thinking about what could be done at this property. Sorry. So that, I mean, just the fact that he's, it's a Boston-based firm, he's taking the time to come down, look at everything, clearly read the reports, respond to our questions accordingly. It's all very, very positive feelings coming from that aspect.
I also think that it was key, we may have heard it anyway, but he specifically responded when I asked them to follow up on their workload. And I think we all kind of indirectly, probably you, Jeff, more than any of us, got the impression that for Weston and Sampson, we were not high on their list. We were almost an afterthought. It appeared, that was just perception. And in this instance, I don't think, it seems that he didn't exhale and say, well, we have 17 jobs on the books, but we'll find room,
Right.
Did you share with him the Weston and Sampson
Yep.
report? So they
No.
both had,
The Weston and Sampson report, the report that we've put together, the,
because what did they say on that, on the gym? They said that was thrown, they said tear that down.
yeah.
I think they did.
So I mean, bids for demolition are coming in on April 23rd.
Oh, really?
If we felt the need to request that the DPW hold off, have Building 10 be the last one to be done before, and maybe, you know, whatever selected firm comes and does, you know, just does one more reassessment. It's never, not a bad idea to have them just double check things.
Well, you used the word bid, right? To be followed by funding, or?
That's a council for the question. Question for the council, sorry. I was just watching The Mandalorian. I'm very much in a Yoda mindset right now, sorry.
No, but I think clearly that would be a really good, that would be a very good qualifier if, unless we ruled it out structurally that it's beyond repair. And he didn't, all he said is to the eye,
Yeah,
to a
he-
trained eye,
he's
it
look-
did not look in distress.
I was impressed with the photos that he got, because I was like, how did he get inside the building? But he must have gotten right up to the window to take pictures in. Yeah.
Yeah, it did, that was,
So, all right, I've texted Studio Jaed to come on in and join us, so.
Are they waiting outside?
Yes, I asked them to wait outside. It's weird if you're waiting right out here in the hallway, listening to your potential competition, you know. I mean, otherwise, we're having executive session, and Doug, you know how well that goes. That's become your second home.
Last gentleman just sat here, he did the pointer from here.
Okay.
But we can get you at least hooked up in here.
The other side.
Let's see, right there.
Is there any insight to share on what the Scouters committee might be? Agenda items going on.
Let me just turn this off. You want to?
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come out here this
Yeah,
evening.
Thanks for having us.
So, like we said, you know, got about 50 minutes to go through things.
How many minutes?
50?
50?
50, yep.
We're going to abbreviate that,
Perfect.
all right? It's
very-
probably been a long night already.
Not too bad, not too bad. So, we'll give you the
Well,
floor,
yeah,
and
I'll tell you what, let me see, if this works from up there, I think we might just move up a little closer to you, if that's all right.
that's fine.
All right, that's fine. Why don't we do that? Yeah, yeah. We're gonna keep this very informal and casual.
Okay.
Works for us.
This is just, I just have a couple of these just to leave with you for,
Fantastic.
may reference this later,
Thank you.
that's gonna share, all right?
Okay, great.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for having us here. My name is Philip Conte. I'm an architect and president of Studio Jaed. Thank you for sending along some questions, very helpful. We sort of structured our presentation around those questions. So hopefully as we go through the presentation, we've addressed your questions, and we can certainly go back and forth. And we will go through this briskly. We can address any questions you have. These are the topics that we'll touch upon to address your questions. So in terms of our team, so Studio Jaed, we are an architecture and engineering company. We have two offices, one in Delaware, one in Rhode Island. I work out of the Rhode Island office along with Rick. This is our organizational chart, and there's one change here, and I added a landscape architect that we're currently working with, and that was in response.
We've got live streaming, so it will hold us.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. Okay, so There it goes, it's back. So, in response to some of the questions that Jeff had asked, I added on here Traverse, who is a WBE landscape architect that we're working with on a number of our educational and public projects. And they certainly would be a value-added team member to our team as you look forward to completing the master plan in respect to the open space component that you've discussed. So we have a number of consultants that we typically work with. In addition to our org chart, though, the image to the right is really how I like to present our team, right? We are a collection of individuals, each with a unique skill set, and just like any project, you want to have the right tool for the right job. So Rick and I would be your primary points of contact. It is not unusual for a feasibility study, a planning project like this, for me to be very much involved in as president of the company, as an architect. This is actually part of a project that I really enjoy, and if you were to ask some of the staff, they would really just like to keep me contained sometimes. So feasibility studies are great projects. In fact, the feasibility study that I left you was our most recent non-educational feasibility study that we completed. It was for the state of Delaware, for the state capital, where they had asked to look at a feasibility study where we would put an addition onto their state capital. It's about a $125 million project that is moving forward with the first phase of that project. So that was a project that I led with our team in Delaware, and it sort of gives you a flavor for what we do in terms of feasibility studies. Rick, do you want to talk about your experience and what you're doing?
Sure. So I've been with Studio Jaed for about 2.5 years, doing a lot of pre-K to 12. Prior to that, I had a short stint with Gilbane doing P3 projects. And before that, I was with Sasaki Associates in Watertown for about 22 years, where landscape architecture, master planning went hand in hand with architecture. So and did multiple projects, like some of the things that you're showing here. So.
What about your role?
My role in Smithfield, I am on the planning board. I've been on a planning board for about 12, 13 years now. Enjoy it. It's interesting seeing, like some of you, projects come forward, and then working with developers on the town's behalf.
So as an integrated architecture and engineering firm, we do offer our clients what we call single source accountability. So under our umbrella, we have architecture, interior design, cost estimating, MEP engineering, furniture, fixture, and equipment. And it certainly has helped us move projects along very quickly, where all the communications is in-house. Some of the benefits of that is that we're able to shift the curve to the left, which means for us, early design decisions, our documents are better coordinated because we have everybody in-house. Our response time is reduced, and particularly for the owner, when if a project moves into construction, usually results in reduced change orders, better bid results, and we're able to accelerate the schedule. But even in a feasibility study, having those in-house resources make those narratives much easier, makes our cost estimating much easier. Speaking of our in-house cost estimating, depending upon how we would want to proceed, we could have a third-party cost estimator, and then we have our in-house cost estimating, and usually when we have parallel estimates, we're pretty confident in that. As a group, we know that making those early decisions cost pennies. When those decisions are deferred, that same decision starts costing quarters, and further in the design, it costs dollars. And I want to say, I've looked at all of the work you have done over the last couple of years, and it has been a significant amount of work that has, I think, yielded some really good results and really focused you in on to my understanding, which was this option 5, which is to raise everything and have this community-based building, which needs to serve many different functions, right? There's a lot of different needs and ideas. And, you know, herding the cats and getting that building designed the way everyone wants it to be is going to depend on programmatic needs and also costs, right? What are you going to be able to afford? You know, we tell our clients, if you were to look at a dollar and break that dollar down into what part of the building costs the most and what you should focus on if you were trying to manage costs, this has really been the culmination of our experience over the last, I'll say 18 months, right? Because things have changed over the last 18 months in terms of construction costs. And if people say, you know, can we add a bathroom here or there? Look, that's plumbing. That's all the way at the top. That's not really going to impact the cost of this project. You need to start looking at what you're doing at the site level, right? Foundations and structural. Those contracting costs are going to be constant no matter what. So it's really the exterior enclosure, the foundations and structure and site work is where you need to focus your attention on if you want to control the dollars. So we understand what the scope of work is from your RFP on what you're looking for. We want to progress and refine what I would expect is option 5. Continue to solicit community and town input as it relates to that. Create this master plan for the site, but also develop the building program, right? How big is the building going to be? What functional spaces is it going to have? Establish the building design. What is the building going to look like? Everybody has an opinion. I'm going to show you a little something we did in South Kingstown a couple weeks ago. Preparing cost estimates is going to be important because everyone's going to say, how can we fund it? How, you know, what's the expectation? And associated with costs, phase it. How can we phase this project? Can we do this? Can we build it? Can we build 2 stories but only outfit the first floor and have the second floor sometime in the future, et cetera? So another question was, what's a schedule? How long would something like this take? So right now, this first off really requires a lot of dialogue, right? This was our shot in the dark. We're figuring about 22 to 26 weeks. And these are the categories of work, working in meetings with your committee, the town, workshops, giving us time to do our work, to start our work, do the estimating, and of course developing the final report similar to what I have showed before you. So you asked about our capacity. How important would this project be? So as I mentioned, I, in my role, am very interested in feasibility studies because that's an actual something I can contribute to our firm, and it's something that I enjoy doing. What we're working on right now is these educational master plans, similar to yours, as they go through the Rhode Island Department of Educational process, right? It requires a lot of the same things: schematic design, programming, community engagement, cost estimating. I did not show you them because I showed you a non-school one, but ones that we are actively working on is South Kingstown, and in June, we are turning over a feasibility study for a $125 million new high school campus. And then for East Greenwich, in September of 2023, about $120 million elementary school realignment plan. So those are sort of master plans that we have ongoing parallel to yours. Listen, all of our clients are important. They all deserve the highest priority. And if we manage it internally and together, it's usually not a problem. I would ask that you contact our references to see how we are performing. In terms of capacity, when I look at the team that will be helping Rick, you know, the first quarter of this year, we were a little stressed. But as we start getting into quarter 2 and quarter 3, as we're working on your project, the team that would be working on this are really going to be involved in more construction-related projects. So they'll have the time to support with renderings and design and cost estimating. So our project experience is the Delaware State Capitol, copy that I left in front of you. We're currently working on a new elementary school in Providence, the Harry Kazarian School, and I'll show you a slide from that. And the North Providence elementary schools, which are going to be 3 new elementary schools constructed concurrently. This was just a picture. It's from the feasibility study of the Delaware State Capitol Edition. You asked about our ability to manage the community and engage with the community. I could tell you I found nothing more difficult than to manage state legislators from both parties, where we are planning an addition that would almost double the size of the state capitol. That was very complex in terms of engagement, but we were very successful, and I'm very proud of that project as it starts to move forward. The Harry Kazarian School is unique in that this existing elementary school at this particular park, Father Lennon Park, has on that same site a rec center, a pool, and an early childhood learning center. All of those pieces will remain while we demolish the existing elementary school and build a new elementary school in that same location. So there's a lot of site planning that went here, was involved in here, making sure that we centralize the parking, maintain separate play areas, maintain the park, the rec center, the pool, and the daycare. So there's a lot of site planning here.
And those areas are not under the care and control of the school department.
Correct. So we're dealing with multiple agencies here at the same time. The last I had just mentioned was the 3 new elementary schools at North Providence, where we will be building site amenities and new schools on those existing sites while the existing school remains operational. So these complex site-related projects, we are not risk-averse to. So I want to just tell you what we did a couple weeks ago in South Kingstown for the high school project. On March 18th, we had about maybe 35 attendees, and we participated in some charrettes where they were able to look at some images and rank them and rate them. Also participate in some planning activities on those tables where they were giving blocks of spaces and how would they lay those spaces on the sites. And we had about 10 different groups, let them work for about 40 minutes, then report out over the last 20. It really lets the community and the residents participate in the design process. Certainly, they quickly learn how difficult it is to be an architect or a planner, but it helps them feel engaged. And even if we get just a little bit of information out of it, it's value added. Just another picture from that event. And this was just some of their concepts. We take their concepts and we translated that to bubble diagrams, and we had them work on the contextual guidance. This was kind of interesting. What we had them do is we had about, 40 images there, and we asked people to walk through and say, if this was the image of the new high school, what would you think? This might be important to you unless you know what the community wants. What does the Halliwell Center want to look like? Is it going to be more natural feel? Is it going to look like it came and was dropped from a spaceship? Probably not, but just saying it gives people that opportunity to show us what they like and certainly like what they don't like, right? This is not what the South Kingstown High School will look like, right? It'll look more like that, not this. And then, of course, we always want to give people a graffiti wall where they can share their comments with us anonymously and move forward. And these are some things that we would do as we moved your design forward. And then we translate them. We have found value in developing very quickly some site concepts that we can quickly put onto a survey and share that link out to the community. So the community could look at half a dozen different site concepts and quickly give us their opinion. There's a number of survey tools that we use. you know, when we engage, we want to have this discussion. Are we engaging just to inform, or are we engaging all the way to empowering? And there are ranges in between. And at certain times, you may be more towards empowering, but at some point, it may become just informational. So you sort of got to read the room, understand what level of engagement is appropriate at that time. And again, we have another number of tools that we've used: surveys, Mentimeters, experience mapping, et cetera, to engage with the community on how that building could actually be used, or what features they're really looking for the site. The last question was, how could we support you in grant writing? So one thing that I've learned quickly is to stay in my lane, right? We're architects and engineers. We're not grant writers. I can support grant writers with content, renderings, information, cost estimates, narratives, and analysis. We can support a grant writing effort, but we are not grant writers. And that concludes this part of the presentation. And I want to give you the rest of the time just to ask us some more detailed questions, and if we have to, we could go back.
I'm just, maybe you can expand a little bit on, it looks like you've done charrettes. Are there, what other methods would you use to outreach to the public? Because we're going to have a lot of groups, a lot of people who are going to want to have input to that, who maybe may not be able to make a, you know, just a charrette. What are some other ways that you've outreached to the public to gather information?
So this tool, and you may have heard it from other consultants, but Mentimeter is a very good virtual platform. So if we had to not only have face-to-face charrettes, but if we had to have a virtual charrette, then we would structure the activities around Mentimeter. And Mentimeter is live polling. So if we pose a question or an image or a design concept, people from their phones anonymously are applying. And it allows other people in the public to see the results as well as the participants. And that continues the conversation along. So, you know, during COVID, we all became experts in virtual charrettes. So a virtual charrette is no problem, and we have tools for that. Face-to-face is also a good one. And then you have the static one, which is the survey that people can take on their own at different times. And I think it's all about creating a blend, right? You're going to have a building of a certain size that probably has to do everything. And, you know, that's going to be a challenge. Yes, you can do everything. The building will be gigantic and cost prohibitive. So how can we educate the community in that understanding that the spaces need to be flexible? And just because they're flexible doesn't mean that they can't accommodate a ceramic studio one day or a yoga studio the next day. Or, you know, there's going to be, I believe there's going to be a lot of educating of the community. We should hear from the community what they want. Then as design professionals and experts in the field, try to convey back to them how they'll get that. And do it in a way that is constructive and iterative, so they see that. Bring them along through the design process.
How is, most of what you presented, showed in your presentation were schools?
Yes.
Those larger budget amounts.
Yes.
How many, can you speak briefly on the number of community-based, functional buildings that are not school that you construct?
Sure. So I know in our Delaware office, we're just about to start a feasibility study for the Police Athletic League. And I expect that's going to be like a 5,000 to 7,000 square foot building. But that has not yet started out of that office. Rick is working on, you want to talk about Elmwood? At least how that has progressed?
So we're working on a project for Elmwood Community Center. It's a neighborhood building, has a gym and then a social room with it.
City of Providence.
For the city of Providence, yeah. Personally, when I was at Suzaki, I was the project architect for a YMCA. And it was Andover, North Andover YMCA. 110,000 square feet. That had multiple uses. I mean, we had, the addition was a pool and weights and fitness, but we also had a community centers. We actually had a child care center where, parents would drop off the young children during the day. So there was intermingling, and actually there was a rehab. Lawrence General Hospital actually had a rehab center on the lower level, a third party. So that facility basically handled a large range of people, so age groups. So, and they all had to intermingle, but not intermingle. So, so it was interesting.
Project, is that still in the design phase?
It's in construction right now. Yep.
Just, I'm curious, what was the duration from start to this, to the current?
There was a significant amount of vandalism done.
But
And
I meant the design, the interaction, that whole aspect of it with the community, it evolved similar to
No.
what this would be?
No. That project was originally driven by the Department of Public Property to renovate the building. Then the council person got involved and the project grew. Then there was a significant amount of vandalism done, which sort of delayed the project for, 3-6 months. And now, so that has added to this. So that is a community-based project, community center, not like what you're planning. That's
So
just.
can you speak to any recent projects that would mirror what we're envisioning?
Other than the state of Delaware one or a large-scale educational one, I would say none.
And then you mentioned the umbrella. I just wanted to clarify because I was looking at the umbrella. Everything on the MEP side are consultants within the umbrella, or they're employees?
No, they're employees. So Studio Jaed is an architecture and MEP engineering company. So the only engineering we go outside our company for is site civil and structural.
And how does that relate to, we have clearly need to focus on the idea of a tiered approach to this project, whether it be through financial constraints or just immediate needs. So the outdoor phase would likely come first. So what is your strength as it relates to open space, outdoor, recreational type design?
Sure. So our experience is limited. That's why I have added to our team Traverse, who is a landscape architect. So in the presentation, you see them on my org chart. In my proposal, you do not. But we certainly would bring them on board. We're working with them on all our projects anyway. Go ahead.
While I was with Suzaki, which was not that long ago, multiple projects, including a zoo, museum in Worcester. Is now the Ecotarium, used to be the New England Science Center. We, designed pathways, designed exhibits, designed planetarium, just a total landscape integrated into the building, which was old Edward Durrell Stone building. It was a famous building. So redid the building, put a new facade on part of it. So that was, again, integrating animals, people, site, a historical building. So that was a very interesting project. So.
What do you see as one of the bigger challenges with projects like this?
I would say managing expectations
has typically been the biggest challenge, right? We can work through wetlands areas, and all of those parameters are pretty prescriptive. It can tell you where you can design, where you can't. Managing expectations, we have found, is the biggest challenge, particularly as it relates to the cost estimate, the phasing, and what are the priorities. You'll be challenged as to, well, how did you establish these priorities? Why is this the most important piece to start with? How can we be assured that you will continue with the project so that maybe this particular group's wants and needs will be recognized? Honest, open, and transparent communication process, which I believe you have already done, or at least to me, it appears you have done in all of the work that you've done to date, which, like I said, is a lot of good work. So certainly your credibility, I'm hoping, is very high in the community with the process, and we would want to maintain that. And as you start realizing a project, it's all about managing expectations. We don't want to show something that you could never afford, that'll never happen. But we do want people to understand why you are making the decisions you are. So I'll say managing expectations. Everything else is engineering related or architecture related, and there's only a technical solution to that.
My question was, this project feels like it's fairly unique to, historically what you've done. What is the draw for you to this project? Like, why? What's the interest? Why Halliwell? Why a community center? When you're historically mostly doing school or urban type projects. Like, what are you looking to put into it that's unique, or what are you trying to get out of it? Like, help me understand why this.
Sure. I'll ask Rick to add to this too. For us, we do a lot of municipal work, a lot of public work, a lot of school work. And for me, in the direction that we're going as a company, they're projects that impact like people, right? Whether they're children or whether they're the public. They are community-based projects. It's not a developer-driven vision that we are just executing. This is a project where we're able to use our skill sets to help a community recognize something that will benefit the community. And those are the types of projects that I and my company like to do. There's value in that. Feasibility studies are not money-making projects for our company. On the contrary, they usually are loss projects. But that's okay, because they are projects that we get to interact with the community, we get to sharpen our skills, we get to, engage with people, as opposed to producing documents for construction that are profit-driven projects. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that this project in particular, there's going to be a lot of different constituents. It's interesting for me that you're talking about, on one hand, probably a senior center, maybe more stuff for kids. So actually having that, say, we've done a lot of makerspace, library type of facilities. You could see something like that intermingled with, a senior center. So now you get that dynamic between the old and the young. In addition to, a substantial grounds where you can have walking trails. We can have, gardens where, again, the old and the young are learning together. Same thing with arts and crafts, and whether or not it's painting or drawing or ceramics. I mean, maybe it's, only under 16 and over 60 can only play, so that you make sure that it's just, seniors and younger kind of interacting. But I think that's the, trying to create a vision, and like Phil said, it's really not what you're doing. It's, I mean, and we've heard this on different. It's the why, right? Why are we doing this then? And how are we going to do it? And then actually, what is it? You know, I think it has to be the process instead of just saying, what are we going to build? You know, because that'll always get, people always come out of different viewpoints. But if you're saying why are we doing this? Kind of you can manage that. You can create an argument for it, and then manage that argument. So.
And I think the reason for showing you the schoolwork is because those buildings contain the spaces that you're going to be looking for. Multi-use space, cafeteria space, art space, music space, dance space. And similar to you, they need to recognize efficiencies as well. So how do we redundantly use spaces? Instead of explaining it to the community members, we have to explain it to the educators. And it's all about managing the educators' expectations as well. And to what your statement was earlier, we always run around the office and preach what we say, do no harm, meaning you better keep in mind that whatever we're doing does not jam us up from doing something else later. Whether that means how we design a central plant in a building so that it could expand if the building expands, or, you know, are we locking ourselves in here that we could not add on or build on as we phase through this? So do no harm is sort of like an underlying tone in our office as we approach these studies, because none of them do it all at one time.
Yeah, and I understand probably, you know, the question as far as you know, master planners and stuff like that. But you know, even when I was, you know, working at my previous employer, architects were working with landscape architects. They're working with master planners. Somebody had to drive it, and usually the architect drove it, but was working as a team, and I mean a integrated team, learning from one another, but that usually was the architect's kind of to not have a vision right away, but to develop a vision. with everyone's input. I think that's where, we can assist in understanding, and I think we do now, exactly what that master plan would be. That would be bringing in the correct consultant, going after the consultant that could really be the correct consultant, the correct landscape architect or master planner to help this project would be our responsibility to come to you with, instead of us saying, yeah, we do everything, because nobody does everything. You can't be good at everything. You have to be able to interpret, be able to work with, and then also lead and actually come up with a vision that basically matches, not matches, but works with your vision, so.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
We're going to probably have our deliberations after you take folks leave, so we're expecting to make a recommendation in town council on Monday night for who we think should be proceeding with negotiations, so we'll certainly keep you apprised of everything that's going on and the decisions that are being made. So thank you for coming out this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So if you guys need to take a recess for a minute. Okay.
That's the existing.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Would you mind if I hit the restroom real quick?
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
So give him a second and we'll,
Yeah, I will. So what is I'm just curious if, does the town council see it as it relates to scouters? I mean, should we encourage them to tell that committee that it would be good to actively collaborate with us?
I was just
I mean,
going
it's great for us to reach out, and I applaud, and we all agree, but I think it'd have more impact if it came from above as an edict,
You're talking about the collaboration of us and
Correct, yes.
scouts, absolutely.
oh, this is going to show up at,
Start.
I was just,
No, and the people would see it, and they would
They say,
laugh,
"Why-
and say, why are you doing this?
For the town's sake, we have to go as a coordinated effort.
certainly.
Whatever we end up doing, we have to do it coordinated.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever the hell they appoint committee.
I didn't realize, so there is, I figured we were just talking freely until, I didn't realize that the million was linked
I
to
believe
the
so.
four.
I
I
believe,
didn't know that we had to put up money either.
I believe one of the statements that the administrator had said was that for the 4 million,
Take care.
have a good night. For the 4 million that was set aside by the federal government, that we have to put up $1 million.
I knew that they said it was going to cost more than that, so we probably would need a.
Frankly, I think it's a good idea, because you're gonna blow through 4 million, but it also forces the community
Yeah, should we have the cost.
to invest in more than just words.
All right. So,
Do we need to discuss?
initial thoughts, reactions.
Well, honestly, though, I will, I mean, Bob's response is, I can read it already, but, no, honestly, you're an architect, so you have your own perspective.
That's why I'm staying silent.
But I did, no, I thought that the chairman, I mean, the CEO was, I think he's a dynamic person, very engaging, and I think he probably excels at what they do well. The ending by the gentleman from Smithfield, who's on the planning board, the chief architect, I think he did the best part of the presentation was his closing statement, if you will. So if we had not had the first interview, I would be a very positive towards them, knowing well that we've already made the observation that we weren't shown anything that is representative of our desire. We were shown larger projects, much larger dollar values, and we didn't see an immediate embrace and attack of the civil outdoor activity. So I think that was an immediate observation that they didn't recognize that. It was apparent that if they did visit the site prior, they certainly didn't see it fit to mention it, so therefore I'm concluding that they didn't. So, I mean, I was trying to be professional to give them a chance to engage and express themselves, but I think in total, it appears quite clear to me that we have a better, more intimate, personal sense that the first presenter, BH+A, has a better grasp on what we desire and has taken the time of their own accord, at their own expense, to go there and start to envision as an architect should. So, I mean, I think, not to say anything negative about Studio Jaed, because I think they are probably excellent at what they do when the project fits.
Absolutely.
But I think steadfast that the best choice, and the people listening would probably agree, is the BH+A. Because of the fit that we seem to sense we got.
Well, you said a word that I had been thinking, which is personal, and I felt like that first presentation for BH+A really understood what we were trying to do. We understood the site. You had asked, you know, you didn't feel like you had to, you know, probe, are we going to be a priority for you, right? Whereas with the second presentation, it was like, well, we've been really stressed at the beginning of the year, but we're going to make room for you. And we didn't get the sense that they had visited the site or that they had really understood the scope of what we're trying to do. You know, I felt like BH+A for me was a clear, better fit for what we're trying to do. I felt comfortable that they would shepherd us through this process and do a great job. Their experience speaks volumes. They have great results. I felt really good about BH+A. Studio Jaed, I would still have a lot of, you know, concerns about.
I would echo all of that as well. I do like BH+A's schedule. I know it's spread out. He looked at possibly a 9-month schedule, but I don't think we're in any great hurry to rush through this. So taking our time, working our way through it, I felt 22 weeks is maybe a little compressed, and it's just kind of get it done to get it done. And I do agree, I think it was a little more, BH+A had, I felt a little more personal connection, having had him visit the site, integrate some of the art that still remains over there, and already give thought to what could possibly be put there, was a good touch.
BH+A, I'm sure you gave both them and Jaed the information that we're going to do more of an outside. They came prepared to discuss the direction we were going in. This gentleman, although very nice, said he had a consultant he put on that we had not been on before. Obviously, to me, BH+A is the firm we should go with for the design. Thank you.
I think the last comment in concert with all is that when you looked at the project list of BH+A, you know, the word community there's 25 lists that included the word community. So by definition, their strength is to achieve what our objective stated is.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the.
Wait a minute, Jeff's going to explode if he doesn't
We have silence at the helm.
Jeff is going
No.
to explode if he doesn't get to say his
I thought you didn't say anything.
No, you know,
Sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
He's turning red.
no, I am not turning red. No, I'm thrilled to hear all of your reactions to the interview, because I'm just so used to this process and understanding, and I've been on the other side of the table and everything. So, you know, a lot to me is the interaction, because to me, that's the most important part. How our initial interaction is going to be, sets the tone for the remainder of the project. It's, you know, my previous boss would call these interviews our first date, essentially, getting to know everybody. So this was our night of first dates here. And, you know, it seems obvious to me which way the committee is certainly leaning. And while both firms are very well, extremely qualified, I think there is there's the clear one that we'll be moving forward with. So, you know, I think what BH+A has certainly gone and done their homework and understood where our first step is going to be, but then has also, you know, the 35 plus years experience for all of these community type spaces and centers is, there's really no comparison to, I understand Studio Jaed has, you know, a lot of civic work, but we haven't seen a lot of community centers coming from them. So while I'm sure they would be more than capable of able to get us through the process, I get concerned with not having that in their initial qualification package. So I think I'm in agreement with all the four that are up here as well. So now you can go ahead and.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the town council and BH+A as our design engineer for the Halliwell project.
All right, we have a motion for BH+A and a second. Do I need to even do a roll call?
You might as well for the record.
All right, let's do a roll call. Mr. Najarian.
Yes.
Mr. Simpkins.
Yes.
Mr. Savini.
Yes.
Mr. Mayo.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right.
Oh, can I make a friendly, before you adjourn, can we send something up the chain of command to ask that a representative be appointed from the town council? Or was it Councilman?
I think he'd be good, because he's sharp.
Oh, yeah,
He'd be very
no
good.
doubt, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think if we're going to start this process,
definitely.
and I was quite impressed that we were able to achieve our objective, we must have a direct line that is representative of at least the sentiment and can report and not put the pressure on the chair to constantly have to go there and navigate through the waters.
I can certainly bring that up. I believe their agenda deadline is usually Wednesday afternoon, so I'll request that get put on the next agenda item for them.
Following up on what Bob said, I think especially where we potentially have Scouters Hall project, there should be someone from the council seated on this and that.
It should be the same
So
person.
it should be the same person, so that they will be able to help coordinate what we do and what they're doing, so we can all keep it together and report to the community a combined effort to accomplish great things for North Smithfield.
Yep, and I would also hope that as we get into this master planning process, that we bring, I know both Tom Kravitz, prior to him leaving, was in attendance at our meetings, and then Bobby had taken over, and then since we kind of got hit a stumbling block for a little while, they've been kind of absent. So I would suspect that a member of the planning department would also be incorporated into this, so.
Oh, can I make one other thought, just floated out there, for Bob? You know, whether it's official or unofficial, I'm just speaking freely. It may not be a bad idea to just touch base with the Y and tell them that things are not, the door did not close in its entirety. For whatever it's worth to them, I don't think the door is closed.
And it might be wise to just let them know that
Sure.
there is still, and we're just starting, but we have not ruled out, we certainly didn't run to them like we thought we might, but it might be good to just give them the hint that there may still be an opportunity.
And I can do that too.
Especially with BH+A talking about the pickleball courts, the outdoor, and the Y would be right in line with all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And they could even be consult with our design engineer on what they, like, the big thing, it may not happen today, but in 10 years if something comes, they could be part of that project. I think it would be very good to keep that in, absolutely.
And whether we do it officially or unofficially for the political aspect of it, I think a friendly phone call that is off the record, if that's what's needed, is not gonna hurt
The
anything.
chair makes the call, but it's up to Jeff.
I'll let them know
She
what's
can
going on.
make it. I'm the old one.
All right,
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
all right. We have a motion to adjourn in a second.
You can take
All in favor?
it.
Aye. All right, thank you.